Buongiorno e grazie. Mi sono impegnato a parlare inglese e terrò a quell'impegno, però volevo per prima una parola di riconoscimento del fatto di essere qua a Roma a parlare del diritto statunitense in quanto avvocato americano. Nella mia formazione di giurista, vari maestri italiani di giurisprudenza erano molto importanti per me, professori di diritto pubblico, di diritto privato, come per esempio Mauro Capoletti, Joachim Bonnell, Antonio Lapergola, Paolo Mengolzi. E da questi giuristi ho preso due cose anzi, di molto importante. Uno, un grande rispetto per i poteri del diritto ad essere strumento per risolvere dei problemi, per affrontare le necessità della società, e poi anche un grande rispetto per il valore dell'indagine di diritto comparato e dunque stare qua con voi oggi a parlare del contributo che il diritto statunitense in materia di urbanismo, di governo di aree metropolitane può fornire all'affrontare il problema qua in Italia, e per me è un grande piacere e un grande onore. E complimento gli organizzatori di questo seminario sul fatto di aver adottato questa prospettiva di diritto comparato. Ahora voy a hablar un idioma de mi ciudad, que es de Los Ángeles, que es también idioma de otras grandes áreas metropolitanas norteamericanas como Houston, Miami, Nueva York y Chicago. This is a joke, but with a point. The largest metropolitan areas in the United States are very cosmopolitan places. In the city in which I live, the metropolitan area in which I live, in the public schools of the city of Los Angeles, approximately 2/3 of the children come from families where Spanish is spoken at home. Half of the population, almost half of the population of the city of Los Angeles was born outside of the United States. Los Angeles is perhaps an extreme example of this, but it is not the only example of it. And to understand something about the cosmopolitan nature of the large cities in the United States is helpful in appreciating the challenges of their governance. What I bring today as an American lawyer focused on the questions of metropolitan governance is something which is very influenced by my own background. American lawyers tend to be very pragmatic. American lawyers tend not to look for overall theoretical frameworks to explain things. And in fact, I am going to talk about specific instances, specific techniques of governance, of financing of metropolitan governance. I'm also going to highlight a phenomenon of Americans. This is not an original observation on my part. In fact, it's the observation of a French expert on American law. I'm referring to Alexis de Tocqueville. He came to the United States when American democracy was very young, when it really was the great experience. The amount of time that had transpired from the adoption of the United States Constitution to his visit was on the order of the amount of time that has transpired since the adoption of Italy's 1948 Constitution. So everything was really quite new. And what struck him in his visit was how much the Americans were using the principle of association to solve their problems. His observation was that Americans joined organizations. They created organizations. They had organizations for everything. And it was through these organizations that they attempted to resolve their problems. So pragmatism and joining are two themes on which I am going to focus my comments. A first point, hierarchy. The national government, the states, the counties, the municipalities. That's a hierarchy. It doesn't really work to use that hierarchy to understand metropolitan governance in the United States. A first problem is the federalism, the system of federalism in the United States. The idea, the basic concept of American federalism is that the states have all the power, and the states have delegated specific and limited powers to the national government. So the notion of a hierarchy, a pyramidal hierarchy, where the national government is somehow the leader in charge, that does not work in the context of American federalism. Another aspect of American federalism is that each state has its own system of governance, its own form of organization. In general, they are subdivided into counties and municipalities. But that said, there is great diversity among the ways that American states are organized. The kinds of entities that states have created, the kinds of municipalities that they have allowed to exist, they vary quite considerably. And they are not meant to be comprehensive. Just as Paris is both a city and a department, in California, the city of San Francisco is both a city and a county. My city of Los Angeles is a city of perhaps 3 million people in a county of Los Angeles of perhaps 7 or 8 million people. And there are parts of the county of Los Angeles that are not within any municipality, that are administered, that have municipal services provided directly by the county government. So there is great heterogeneity in the forms of organization. In terms of public administration, there are approximately 11 million people who work for local governments as employees, about 3.8 million people who work for state governments as employees, and about 2.8 million people who work for the national government. Most of the public administration is with local governments. The public administration constituted by the states is still greater than that which comprises the federal government. So just at the levels of who does things, what resources, what human resources are available, it is the local governments where the preponderance of those resources exist. The states and the federal governments intervene in local government in quite massive ways, and most powerfully through the issue of money. Fiscal federalism in the United States is a complex topic. In general, the national government collects taxes based on income. In general, local governments collect taxes based on property and sales taxes. These revenue sources are different. There is sharing of revenue from the federal government, from the state governments to municipalities. Frequently, this sharing of revenue is based on conditions. Thus, for example, in the United States, in each of the 50 states, state law provides that the age to be allowed to drink alcohol is 21. Where does that come from? It comes from the federal government deciding that unless a state changed its law to provide that the legal drinking age would be 21 years of age, federal funding for highway projects would not be forthcoming. And each of the states changed its law to continue to receive the federal funding for highway projects. There are similar conditions placed